Hello friends, my name is Behroz and welcome to the channel where I share with you tips and tricks that I read, learn and apply in order to become the best version of myself. Now in this video, I will talk about basics of personal budgeting and how you should go about creating your own personal budget. Now in case you have a specific saving goal in mind just because you want to purchase something, let's say a house or a car, or is it just because you want to achieve financial freedom as soon as possible? In that case, the only best friend that you will have is that budget that you will create and then track your expenses against that budget. Let me share with you key elements for creating an effective budget. Now, the most important prerequisite to creating a budget is to make sure that you first and foremost understand what are your spending patterns. It is very important to understand how you are spending and what your expenses are before you go ahead and create the budget. And in order to understand your expenses, you need to track your past 12 to 6 months of expenses and categorize them into big buckets. So the key buckets that I recommend tracking are rent, car and fuel, fitness, which could include gym membership, networking, which would include your internet bill and the mobile bill. Then comes grocery, extracurricular activities, primarily if you have kids, eat out, entertainment, shopping, hygiene, could be cleaning, haircuts, stuff like that. A bucket for miscellaneous, something that you cannot allocate in these buckets. And last but not the least, a bucket for saving. Now make sure you don't have a laundry list of buckets because you want to create a process which is very simple and easy to follow through. If you have a long list of buckets, let's say 20 or 20 plus, in that case, it will be very complicated for you to populate and follow through the entire system of tracking the expenses and budgeting. And when once something is complicated, it is very easy for it to fall through the cracks and you will eventually end up not doing it at all just because it consumes a lot of time and energy on your part. So you rather have a system which is less detailed but you can keep it alive forever versus having a system which is very complicated and it only lives for a few months. Now once you have your spending pattern information with you in these buckets for past 6 to 12 months, you can use this information to create your budget going forward. Now if you don't do this prerequisite of tracking your spending, you may be just guessing what you want to spend in each of the buckets without realizing that there are certain needs that you have which make you spend in a certain way. So it's important to understand what those needs are, what your spending patterns are, and basis that you can use that information and then decide how you want to tailor those spending patterns that you've had in the past and then create a budget which should be an expense that you want to make going forward. So let's say in the absence of this information, I can simply go and say I will spend $1,000 on grocery, not realizing that in past I've been spending around $1,500 on grocery. So is it realistic to just assume that my grocery going forward will be 50% less? No. However, once I have the knowledge of what my grocery spending has been in past, let's say $1,500, I can use that number and make an assumption that going forward, my budget for grocery should be somewhere around $1,400. Now, this is something which is achievable. And just as I move from month to month, I continue to optimize and tweak that budget slowly and gradually such that it is sustainable and I can squeeze out dollars from it over a period of time and move more and more dollars into saving. Now, you have to determine which are the buckets where you want to spend more and which are the buckets from where you want to optimize. This decision should be driven by your life's purpose and what brings you happiness. For instance, it could be your car which brings you happiness and hence you want to invest more in your car. Or it could be eat outs. You just love going out and trying different cuisines in different restaurants and that is what brings you more happiness. Now note, there could be more than one thing which brings you happiness. But if the objective is to be financially free, in that case, you need to prioritize and pick that one thing which brings you the most amount of happiness. And similarly, then you need to also pick that one bucket from where you want to optimize because that's one bucket which brings you the least amount of happiness. And this is the bucket from where you optimize in order to fund your priority bucket. Now, as I said, once you have this expense information ready with you, you want to start with the total expense number. So let's assume my historical spending has been around $6,000. I would like to start with $5,500 as a total expense. Now, there are certain expense items which are very much fixed and they don't change much month on month. These primarily include your rent and mortgage, your utility bills, and your car and fuel cost. Now, fuel cost may vary just because how the fuel prices are in the market or if you're traveling more or less, but usually our commute is very much standard. There is a standard commute that we are doing to the office and there is a standard commute that we are doing to the grocery store, and hence it's pretty much in a fixed range. So it should be very easy for you to simply pick the expense number that you've incurred in past 6 to 12 months and assume that to be your budget. Unless there is a dramatic shift that you want to do with your life, that is scale up your car or house, or maybe scale down your car or house. But assuming you want to maintain the same house and you want to maintain the same car and same commute, these costs won't change a lot. Now let's say after budgeting for these items, you are left with only 50% of your budget, which is somewhere around $2,750. Now these are the $2,750 that you now need to allocate between your grocery, your entertainment, your eat outs, etc. Here start with the most important and obvious needs and not the wants. The needs here are, let's say, grocery. So start and budget for grocery. So for me, primarily, I won't be very aggressive with my grocery spending. So what I will do is I will see how much I've spent in the past on grocery and reduce it by, let's say, 5% and assume that to be the budget. Unless you have been very excessive with your grocery spending. Let's say buying all organic food. In that case, you can go ahead and put an aggressive target. But in case you more or less have an idea of the kind of stuff you buy from the grocery store and you feel that that is not very excessive, that case, just keep the target very much reasonable. Now the next important bucket is shopping, which has primarily two parts as well. One is the need part, one is the want part. Need here could be me buying shirt for my apparel that I wear at my work, and want could be me buying a new phone. So now here, using your past expenses, determine how much of your shopping expense went for your needs and how much went for your wants. The needs one should just reflect in the budget as is. And the wants part of the shopping expenses is the part where you want to go aggressive and put an aggressive target in your budget. Now this is a sample expense tracking and budgeting file that I've created for sake of illustration. So as I said, first and foremost, let's start with expense tracking. Here I have all the buckets and then I'm tracking monthly expenditure across all these buckets. Once I have a data which is for at least past 6 months and past 3 months, I can make use of these two columns to estimate or have an idea of how and what my spending pattern is. And basis here, I can go bucket by bucket and create a budget. As I said, there would be certain buckets where you would want to keep them as is, as you've been spending in past, because you don't think that it is beneficial for you to optimize it further, or for that matter, it cannot be optimized any further, at least in the near future. And then there could be buckets where you want to go aggressive and optimize massively. And similarly, there would be buckets where you want to go ahead and increase your spending just because this is the bucket which brings you more happiness. And now once this budget column is created, you can compare your at least past 3 months spending against this budget. It is not beneficial to track every month's spending against the budget because there might be some months where you overspend and some months where you underspend. But on 3 months basis, at least, you should be tracking in line with your budget. And hence I have this column here where I track the delta. Now this is an automated expense tracking tool. I have made a video on this previously where I explain the step-by-step process in order to create this automated expense tracking tool. Please do check that out. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully this video will set you up in the right direction to achieve your financial goals.